Okay, we're live right now, Matt. Awesome to be talking with you again. I'll try not to shout because my wife always tells me I scream too much, so I'll try to keep it like this volume.
Well, it's 3 in the afternoon here. What time is it in your time
Yeah,
zone?
9 p.m. So yeah, we're good.
I
We're
think
we're
you're in
nice.
you're in Finland, aren't you? I,
Yeah, somewhere there, lost in the map, somewhere in the planet.
yeah, somewhere between Iceland and Finland, I heard. Yeah.
Yeah,
Shetland Islands.
somewhere, Matt, somewhere where liberty is a threat. So it could be where
Yeah. Could be
anywhere in the world, right?
almost anywhere. That's right. Yeah, there's so much happening. I wanted to do a show. Anybody that used to follow us, the Sunday people don't understand. The show really occupies a lot of your day. And
Yeah,
because of
yeah.
our time zone difference, 3 p.m. Sunday here works, but that really takes away a day when I can be outside
Mm,
doing boat stuff or other things.
yeah.
And I just felt like, we're kind of saying the same stuff every week.
Mm.
We haven't really moved the ball, but with all the news coming out of Argentina with Millet, do you pronounce his name Millet?
Yeah, Javier Milei. But yeah, anyway,
But
he
yeah,
wouldn't be offended by any way you pronounce it.
yeah, Millet, and then of course what's going on in Spain with
Mm.
the communist takeover,
Yeah,
and which is very, it's kind of like a lawfare takeover. It's sort of like the Democrats in America.
yeah.
They're not doing a coup with tanks. They do a coup by rigging an election and then using the FBI to go after anybody that talks about rigging an election.
Mm.
And in Spain, they basically are staying in power by offering this amnesty deal to, traitors to Spain. The
Yeah.
Catalans would think otherwise. The
Mm.
Catalonians think that we are just fighting for our independence, but to make
Yeah.
a deal for the control of Spain by bringing in separatists, you know, basically traitors to Madrid. I mean, that's
Mm.
it's much more complicated than that. But I mean, the communists in Spain are using lawfare. They have judges that are on the team, lawyers that are on the team, and it's the people can only go on the street
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
as long as that's allowed.
The thing in Spain is complex because Spanish people are very complicated people. They're pretty uh, insane at times. They're very divided, and a lot of people don't know this, but it's the most mountain, the most mountainous terrain of all of Europe. And historically, it's been that the guy from the other side of the hill is my enemy, and the guy from that other side of the
Right.
hill, and it was, I mean, it was one of the few places that, you know, from who was it? Alexander the Great? Who the hell was it that went across here and just could not find a place? They every time Spain was at war at one time or another, it's always been very difficult because the terrain is not your friend, people are not your friend, everything is against you,
Well,
and
again,
you're getting slaughtered.
the terrain can work a lot of different ways because when the Muslims, I'm going to compare Morocco now to Spain. When the
Yeah,
Muslims invaded Morocco, man for man, the Arabs were nothing compared to these tough, smart Berbers.
yeah,
But the Berbers living in Morocco, very similar to Spain, lots of mountain ranges, Atlas Mountains, have 5,000 foot or 5,000 meter mountains in Morocco.
hmm,
So the Muslims could overwhelm the Berbers because you have an entire Muslim force facing one valley or one mountain of Berbers, getting that the Berbers are not getting any help from other Berbers.
yeah,
So one valley at a time, they're just taken over and forcibly converted. You fast forward a few hundred years, they come to Spain, they do the same thing.
hmm,
Berbers who have been Islamized conquer Spain because they can put their entire force against just the next valley in Spain and not
hmm,
get any help until most of Spain is taken over. Finally, later in the period, other European crusaders come. The very top tier of Spanish mountains were never conquered,
no,
so there was always like a foothold in I forget the province,
Yeah,
But
the vast territory, that's the vast territory is maybe the toughest. That's the kind of place that even when you were going to Spain, you just went through it and avoided those crazy bastards because they are like it's like the highlands of Spain basically, and you just don't want to waste your life there. And yeah, as you were saying, it's very difficult. But this also means that every little part of Spain has their own language, their own culture, their own, and the Catalans fight with the Gallegos and with the Basques. I mean, Basque language is caveman language. It is. I mean, Catalan is basically Spanish. The people try to argue otherwise, but it's basically the same thing. Catalan is barely a dialect of Spanish. They get offended if you say that. But Basque language, it's like
no,
nothing
it's like
ever.
related to Phoenician and Finnish language and languages like that that are disconnected. But yeah,
Yeah,
the people in Spain, when you have millions of people come out, that's the
mm,
only force that they have. I saw that Tucker Carlson interview with
yeah,
the opposition leader. Did that
yeah.
get any coverage in Spain? Is Tucker Carlson a known person much in Spain?
I think he got covered, but the thing is, you know how the media works. When you have a left wing media, they just don't promote anything.
Right.
So they just hide it, or they just mention the far right pro Trump. Tucker Carlson said this about. So they always and the same is happening with Milei. It's happening all over the world, really. They just label you as far right. You're always far right. You're never a reasonable person, and that's how they try to hide what they're doing. You know,
But it's sort
everything
of
is far right
it
for them.
may be losing its effect because
Yeah,
in spite of this, in Brazil, the communists won, but with big help. I think a lot of
yeah,
election rigging, similar to what happened in the
barely.
USA. A
Yeah,
lot of election rigging, very questionable results, and then you can't question the results.
yeah,
If you
yeah,
question results, then you're treated like an absolute, enemy of the state.
yeah.
Full force comes down on you. So Brazil and America both, I think, the 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 nationalist populist would have won in a fair election in Brazil and in America.
And how can you explain that Argentina has the result within an hour of the pools closing, and they have 90?
Because they did it the old way without electronic machines. Electronic
Right.
machines are like the devil's plaything. They allow the controller of the machine to stop the count, make
Yeah.
mistakes on purpose, fake but when you have what they do in countries that are legitimate, you get these giant plastic boxes that are clear,
Yeah.
and they're taped like they're taped to hell with sealed tape. Like each
Mm,
party can put their own tape seals over it. So they were not opened. And they're not opened until there's witnesses from everywhere. And in the same 10
yeah.
minutes, every precinct counts paper
Yeah.
ballots. So in a half an hour, the whole precinct, everybody knows exactly the number of ballots. It's all witnessed. That
Yeah.
number then goes up, not a flash drive,
Yeah. But you know what's very interesting? Elections in Argentina work in a different way. Like you have like it's like a primary where then the top two the top two guys that got the most votes, those go to a second run in which you have to vote for either one of those. So you basically have like the option if you voted for like a third or fourth party on the last run, you decide between the top two. So as we have like a, but you know what's interesting is that between the between the two last votings, Javier Milei got allied with Mauricio Macri, the guy that was president before him, which was more of a centrist. But thanks to Macri, he managed to have the apparatus just to actually control the
right.
polling stations
Because I know
all
in
over the
some
country.
countries it's really crazy. Like in the Netherlands, you can have the
Mm.
majority and have no control
Yeah,
because
exactly right.
it's like with the Geert Wilders situation.
Mm.
But the national populists, I think, keep making ground because the more terrorist attacks there are some from the immigrants.
Mm.
Every day you just, of course, I'm on the internet and I follow these people. I'm back on Twitter,
Yeah.
by the way, but so under Musk, Twitter 2.0 X, whatever. I am back under my own real name account. But, well, I had to start a new account, but at least they let me start an account.
Nice.
But yes, so yeah, I think that all of these countries are just reaching a boiling point. There was a terror attack in France, in rural France, where these Muslims came saying, "We're here to," I know it's on YouTube, "we're here to blank the blank people,"
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
And they proceeded to do it. And in the media, it's a blackout. It's
They
like
hide it. Yes,
something
yes.
happened in the country.
Mm.
And then
Yeah.
and then in Ireland, these children are slashed.
Hmm.
And apparently, the 5-year-old girl that's still on life support is probably going to be either dead or brain dead because she had so little blood and her throat was cut. Right.
Insane. Yeah.
So if she is alive, probably she will be a vegetable. And the government of Ireland is completely sold out traitors. I mean, they're not even elected. They're
Yeah.
how they appoint their government in Ireland is just total crap. The people are just being run over roughshod. They want to increase the people that control Europe, that control Ireland.
Mm.
Their stated goal is to increase the population of Ireland by 30%. Like people are just economic units. Like
Yeah.
we have X economic units, but we want 1.4X.
Yeah.
And so we're just going to bring them in from places where they have, no sewage system, where they never evolved 2-story buildings. They never got past the mud hut stage. They're just going to mass import people from there. So there may be some people that believe that it's economically valuable to just bring in more consumers, more people to take on debt, that the native people are all tapped dry. So we'll just bring in more people. But when you're bringing in people that have nothing to offer, that go on welfare forever, and that if they don't get what they want, they'll just, block vehicles, they'll stab children.
And they have such a different they have such a different code of values. They're complete. I mean, I think the perfect example is the guy that stopped the one stabbing was a guy from Brazil.
One of them. He was one of three.
Right.
Only one was from Brazil, and and again, you have to always watch for the narrative. So even in like a counter narrative, you'll see the main narrative accentuated. So you wouldn't know that there's actually 3 people that took him out. The Brazilian guy on the
he was on a motorcycle.
He's a motorbike food deliverer.
Yeah.
And the backstory of that is the Brazilian motorbike delivery thing is a drug delivery thing. Okay.
Really?
Pizzas and sandwiches is the cover for the actual, we're really delivering the hashish. Okay. That this is, why of all places, in Dublin, if you want to order a sandwich, it's a Brazilian guy on a motorcycle shows up. It's just organically happened that way by some coincidence. It's a drug gang. Okay. And maybe this guy wasn't delivering drugs, and maybe I'm exaggerating, but the guy with the helmet got like 100% of the credit. Like, look, a foreign immigrant saved the children.
I mean,
but it was 2 Irish guys and a Brazilian guy. But he's the only one anybody sees or hears of.
Yeah, I see how that would fall for the narrative of the, but look, there's good and wait a minute, there is good people. I don't, but my point here is usually the people that are the most problematic are the ones that don't have the same basic code of moral values. When you bring people that think that selling a child is acceptable, then you have problems.
And not only the cultural aspect of this, but there's a huge housing shortage in Ireland. You see that like one apartment goes for rent and there's a line of 100 people like at 4 in the morning.
It's super expensive.
And so what is the government doing? We want to increase the population 30%. There's homeless Irish people, but they're putting up, that's why in Dublin, one of the targets that was attacked was a Holiday Inn motel
where they were keeping the refugees,
and we see that in America. And this is the government being a traitor against their own people. We see in America a motel near the airport will suddenly have a fence around it and mysterious buses and vans going in and out.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
our own
Correct.
American government is running the smuggling. We have American government built and paid for camps near the Darien Gap in Panama, where people that come from anywhere in the world can fly to Brazil or Ecuador with no visa, right?
Yeah.
This
Yeah. Yeah.
creates an entire new false economy because, sure, if there's just people going through, it's like an energy source, like a flowing river. You can put a paddle wheel on it and take energy off of it. So if people are just coming through your country, suddenly now there's a bus line with 100 of these giant, intercity buses where there were none before. So that's
Yeah.
all making money for the guys that are buying buses from the States, running them up to the Costa
And
Rican border.
they will usually vote a certain way that is favorable to the current administration. They
Yep.
know
But
that.
our own government is doing this to our own people.
Yeah, of course. Yes. Yes.
Kicking American veterans out of veteran centers to put illegal aliens in. I mean, and the border is wide open. Not only can you walk across the border, you can go online and find an app where you can illegally immigrate by airplane and just show your smartphone when you show up. And it's like, wink, wink, get on the white bus outside. We'll take you to what used to be a Best Western or a Holiday Inn, where you'll, in the next week or two, then you'll get in a smaller van to be taken to the small American town where we're going to drop you off. This is complete invasion by traitors.
Yeah.
I mean, it's happening in Europe. It's happening in America.
It is. Yes, it is. And the idea that replacing the population with people that will be more, easy to manage, more controllable, that will, there has to be something like that going on because.
But see, that's at one level. Yes, I understand that at one level. These people will be easier to control. But it's understood by anybody with 120 IQ that bringing in 80 IQ people by the million has no net benefit. It does not. There is no net benefit. The U.S. Army 40, 50 years ago determined it's not worth it to recruit or draft people with, I think it was 85 IQ or lower.
Yeah, you're not useful.
It took more attention to them to teach them to sweep, right?
Yeah.
They cannot benefit the military, and the military is like an analogy here for your society in general.
Yes.
They take more effort, time, cost to watch 85 IQ people than you'll ever get out of them sweeping the latrine.
Yeah.
Ever. So if you have a country where they're bringing in people from Somalia, where the average IQ is like 70, you do it only because you're trying to hurt the country. It's not necessarily that it's like, oh, these bankers just think we need more new credit card accounts. All the Americans are so deep in debt, there's no more churning we can do with their funds. They're already in debt. Let's bring in new people. But the guy from Somalia is only going to be a tax eater, a tax burden. He's never going to produce anything for the local economy.
Joe Biden said it himself that in I don't know how many years white people will be a minority, and that's a good thing.
Sure.
And you have to wonder, why is this man saying that it's a good thing to have a minority white population?
He is Stockholm syndrome works in a lot of ways. It works at the macro level, at an individual level. Biden has been surrounded by his controllers for so long.
And he's always been scum, even before that.
Yeah, everybody that's in his circle, he doesn't even know who's in his circle. He doesn't control who's in his circle. So the people that are feeding him information are only showing this one way. That's why he can come out with a straight face and say the greatest danger to America is white MAGA Republicans.
Yeah.
Because that's what he's hearing every day, all day.
We have good news because, I mean, it's been in Argentina. I have a little clip here from Milei that I want to share with you guys. We have Meloni in Italy. She is very anti-African invasion. She denounces it all the time.
But she does nothing against it. She did nothing against it.
I mean, she still has to deal with Germany and some of the more left
But you
wings.
can look at Germany is an enemy of Italy and Spain directly. Yeah. Germany is the German government gives money to these NGO ships that go out and pick up migrants 1
And they
mile
want
from
to
the
drop it
beach
in
in
your,
Libya. So they say, oh, that's a rescue ship. If there's a company somewhere in China and it's making like 15-meter, 40-foot inflatable boats for one outboard motor that can carry 80 people, it's made purposefully for this one thing. There's no military application for it. There's no life raft on a ship application for it. An inflatable Zodiac that's 40 feet long for a small outboard motor. It's only meant to go from the beach in Libya or in Turkey or another place to go 1 mile out to sea, to then rendezvous with a trader ship, a warship. It's a warship. It's bringing fighting age men to Lampedusa or to the beach of Spain every day, bringing more and more. The German government is paying to invade Europe. If I had any respect from Maloney, she would say, Admiral, I want you to stop that ship by any means, disable its rudder, disable its propeller, let the UN tow it back to Libya. And if that admiral says, I can't because of this agreement, fire that admiral and say, Captain, you're promoted to admiral. Go and do this. And you go down the line until you find an admiral that will say, yes, ma'am, I am going to stop the invasion, not pretend to be all tied up in legal knots from Brussels. Your country's being invaded. Your women are being raped. People are being murdered. Your economy is going down the toilet. Your society is wrecked. And you're saying, well, but there's this discussion in Brussels about whether we have the legal right to defend ourselves. This is like the social macro example of you can't have a gun because you should wait for the police to protect you. Well, what if the police hate you? What if the police want everybody in your neighborhood dead and they don't protect you? A human being has the right to self-defense. A nation has the right to self-defense. A people does. So this idea of every day the same ships paid for by Germany pull up to Italy and drop off 1,000 fighting age men, and the admiral of Italy just says, well, that's all I can't do anything else but get them safely into the harbor and get them on the buses.
The point in which it will change is if you have enough people being voted so as to affect the European Parliament. That's where you have the policy, because whenever it benefits the socialists, they say, "Oh, it's about independence. It's about each country has their own rights." But when it comes to trans rights and all of that bullshit or anything that is on their agenda, they, for example, with Poland, sanctions, always screwing around whenever they do something they don't like. Right, Hungary, the same thing.
The highest priority for Europe, for Brussels rather, is the destruction of Europe. Clearly, because if Poland and Hungary do not want to go along with the mass invasion by, uncivilized people and barbarians, yet in Spain they look the other way during a communist takeover. Right. Yeah. They're completely working outside of the Constitution to lawfare a communist putsch in Spain. And Brussels is like, oh, we don't see any problem there. But every day, ships full of fighting age men from Africa are coming into Italy. And it's like, you have to allow that. You must allow that.
Yeah.
Well, clearly, Brussels is the problem. And the hero of Spain and the hero of Italy is going to be the first president. And I had hope for Melania, but she just, I don't know why she sold out or became a coward, showed her true colors. Somebody has to order the admiral to stop the ship.
Yeah,
you can't just say, because Brussels told us we have to be invaded, we're just going to allow ourselves to be invaded. Can you imagine Great Britain? Somebody told, if FDR told Churchill, oh, just let the Nazis in. You have to let the Nazis in. A country is allowed to defend itself.
Yeah, I think that one of the things I read was that they were being sent from the places that they got in Italy. She was bussing them over. And truth be told, the thing is this: they don't stay mostly in Italy. They go to these places.
This is very comparable to the situation in the USA.
Yeah.
everybody's familiar with the dominoes analogy of knocking dominoes over, right? A line of dominoes. There's another analogy that I like is there's a card trick called flipping the cards. You'll see dealers fan the cards across the table, then take a finger and they can make it flip this way and flip that way, going back and forth, flipping the cards. Everybody knows this trick. As long as every country from Panama to Mexico is making money on the throughput of the migrants, motels make money, people selling food and boots and
along the way, yes.
They're all the bus companies are buying new buses. They're obviously making a fortune. Same thing in Europe. Everybody is making money. Well, you have to flip the economics. The first country that says we close the border, if the president of America said tomorrow, close the borders, we're putting the military on the border, not one more person comes over the border.
Yeah.
That can happen in one night. Then the next day in northern Mexico, you have 100,000, or the next week, you have 100,000 refugees in camps along the border. Now, whose problem is it? It's Mexico's problem. So the next day, the word goes from Mexico City to
they
the
stop
border.
coming. No, I mean,
they won't stop coming if this is the flipping the cards. America closes the border. Boom. Now they're in vast refugee camps. Mexico says we can't tolerate vast refugee camps. America's not being the sucker anymore. America just actually stopped the invasion, which can be done with one order from the president overnight to the army. It's in the Constitution, protect against invasion. It's right in the Constitution. Then it's Mexico's problem. Mexico gives the order to their southern border. Close the border now. Because it's no longer an economic benefit. It's an economic hit. And it goes like the reverse dominoes. Boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
So if the NGO ship that every day is bringing 1,000 fighting age men from Northern Africa, or not even sink it. You don't even need to sink it. You can do things to disable it so it's afloat in the middle of the Mediterranean.
At minimum, it has to be confiscated. It has to be taken away from the people using it.
But then those people got off the ship and they'll get another ship. You see?
Yeah.
The ship has to be afloat in the middle of the Mediterranean.
Paid by Soros, often paid by Soros himself.
And then you say, George Soros, you take it to your island.
Yeah.
It's not coming to Italy. Yeah. And then then they'll say, well, France says we'll take it. Okay, France, you take it. Then there will be a patriot in France that says we can't tolerate that. But you have to flip the script. You have to reverse the dynamic flow of this, and it can be done, but it won't be done till they disable the ship. And remember, these ships go to 1 mile of Libya. They're not out just like, oh, lifeguards. We just happen to see a poor struggling person.
No, they're specifically, and this is where the socialist agenda, the globalist agenda of Africanizing countries, right?
They
Africanizing
want to wreck these countries.
Europe.
When these countries are wrecked, they will have no more sovereign power. When the countries are wrecked, they want to equalize the world at the very bottom level of peasants, serfs, slaves.
Let me play.
That have no way to fight back.
Let me play this from Javier Milei, who explains this in his own words, which I think he's. I mean,
todos los que digamos los colectivistas, los que ponen, digamos, o sea, esa idea. A ver,
¿Por qué le pones de mierda, digamos?
Porque son una mierda. O sea,
because they are shit.
Pero si pensás distinto, te van a aniquilar.
If you think differently from them, they will kill you. This is the point. You can't give the shit leftists an inch. If you give them an inch, they will use it to destroy you. You can't negotiate with leftards. You don't negotiate with trash because they will end you. If they, the left, have a guy that beats his wife, it's one of them, he puts on the green scarf and yells about neoliberalism. In other words, he gets a free pass. When it's one of them, they hide it. They hide all of these. But if you're a conservative, if you're on the other side, they will ruin you. We see that in America too. Lawfare.
¿Por qué? Porque no pensás como ellos. ¿Y sabes qué es lo bueno de todo esto? Hay algo bueno en todo esto. Porque como el error es humano, como todos nos podemos equivocar, ¿sabes qué nos obligan? Nos obligan a ser mejores. Y como estamos siendo tan mejores que ellos, como los estamos aplastando en la batalla cultural, los estamos pasando de arriba, porque no solo le ganamos en lo productivo, somos superiores moralmente,
Morally
somos
superior.
superiores
He's right about that.
estéticamente, somos mejores en todo. Y les duele. Les duele. Entonces, como no pueden pelear con las herramientas legítimas, se apalancan en el aparato represivo del Estado, poniendo torres de guita para hacernos mierda. Y aún así no pueden. Tuvieron que bajar la nota. ¿Me entendés? Que están perdiendo.
They're losing. He's right, I think.
Están perdiendo la batalla cultural, los zurdos.
But they don't give up. They'll have the unions shut down every train, every trash pickup.
Yeah.
They'll do everything that they can to make him not succeed. Even if Argentina was on the verge of becoming another Switzerland, the left would rather wreck it.
Oh, of course.
The left is never going to say, well, let's give Milei a chance and we'll see what he does.
Never. But he understands that. He knows that if you give, and it's at 1 millimeter is a lot less than an inch. The translation says, but he says if you give them a millimeter, a millimeter is like this. No, it's not an inch. But I found it that's funny when she said, "What do you mean by shit leftard?" And he says,
but he's going
shit.
to be taken out. Trump was talking, not the same words, but that's how Trump was talking. And the deep state, the FBI, CIA, they took him out. They attacked him falsely for 2 years with the whole fake Russia thing. Yeah. They took him out, and they're going to take out Milei. They will never just surrender. Or they'll take somebody like Meloni in Italy, and whatever they'll do, blackmail her, put some pressure on her. She comes in like a Trump, and then she turns right around. And that's why I don't really trust Milei. Part of me is saying he's an actor. That this is like that. Well, like Vivek Ramaswamy is a great talker. He's a great debater. Okay. Yeah. But when you go back in his past, he did not make money from actually inventing anything in biopharma. Yeah. He was good at doing the financial manipulation, in the biopharma, stock world. But he didn't invent anything biopharma. That's where he made his money, was manipulating finances. And there's other quotes of him. He's talking just like Obama. Same thing with Robert F. Kennedy. He's like, oh, great on the forced injections, but then he's talking about gun control. I don't trust any of these politicians. I'm hopeful, but
me too.
Meantime, it's like,
the results is what matters.
Your house is on fire. Your house is burning to the ground. It's on fire. You need a firefighter, a fire truck right now. And we're back at 2 kilometers away at the firehouse. And they're saying, well, we're voting for the guy that's going to put firemen back on fire trucks. And maybe tomorrow. It's too late. The house is burned down. All these delaying tactics give you hope. All these delaying tactics. Oh, this new guy. Maybe next year Trump comes back. Meanwhile, millions of people are coming into your country. You're never going to get out. They are in America, they give them debit cards. They give them a couple $1,000s a month on a debit card. That pays to keep them peaceful for now. But at the moment when a Republican comes in and says the debt-free debit card money is over, or when a Democrat just wants to turn up the violence, the anarcho-tyranny, they're going to cut off the debit cards. And you have this, it's like all of these charged particles are just ready to ignite. They're basically stacking dynamite into Europe and into America. And the social contract is pay us welfare and we won't burn down your city. But when the economy gets to the point where you can't pay the welfare because through inflation, no money has any more value, they can keep putting money on the debit card, but it doesn't buy food. Then it's not like you're going to have a depression in 1930s Germany where it was all Germans, at least, or a depression in any other country, America. Now you're going to have a depression and the Somalis will be fighting against the Eritreans and the Chechens will be fighting against the Russians that we've all allowed into our country. This is not an accident. They are stacking the dynamite in our basement so it will detonate. They don't do it. I think they do not do it because they think it's an economic benefit. They do it
Yeah.
because they hate the West. The West is the last bulwark against this globalist takeover. Free countries, America and in Europe, they're doing this to wreck those countries.
How
So they
much freedom
can't
is there
resist.
left, really? How much freedom do we have anywhere? I mean,
Not in England. You saw what happened
yeah.
with Tommy Robinson today.
But England, the thing in England is it's been that way for a long time. I mean, it was years since people got arrested for retweeting something.
Right.
There's a video that I uploaded in my channel where a man is being a veteran, a British veteran. He's being dragged in handcuffs, and the cop tells him, well, because someone got offended by something you retweeted. That's
Right.
enough to get you arrested.
And that's just the excuse, because they'll always find somebody to be offended. So
Yeah.
basically, they find an opinion that the deep state of any country doesn't like, the entrenched elite. They find an opinion they don't want expressed. They'll always find somebody online to make a complaint. Then they come and arrest you for saying something.
Yeah.
And it's not
Yeah,
just
yeah.
the point of punishing that veteran. That news story gets around, and 1,000 other veterans say, well, I'm just going to not post anything on Facebook anymore because the police
Yeah,
can come and
but that's
drag me
how
away.
one of the things he says, I think we are better than the commies. I think we are better than them in he's right about them being bitter, hateful people. And this is something that Tolkien, the fiction,
Sure.
J.R.R. Tolkien, he said that evil cannot create; it only corrupts that which exists.
But
they are incapable of
what's
creating
the
anything.
good of being more virtuous
Hmm.
as you're marched to the machine gun pit, right?
They're not capable of doing anything.
All the way from the first arrest
Yeah.
to the police car, to the bus, to the train, to the concentration camp. At every, it's like a slaughterhouse shoot where all of the walls and doors go in one way, so you can't back out. Okay. And you get right to the machine gun pit and you tell your guy next to you, well, at least we never stoop to their level. Yeah, you're getting machine gunned like killing fields in Cambodia.
No, you have
and
to
your
be ready to
consolation
fight.
is
Yeah.
we
No,
are
no.
better morally.
No, if
but
you're
dead.
No, it's you cannot reach that point. You have to be ready to fight physically in a hot war against these people.
Just for one example, in Dublin, when these girls were killed by or slashed, and one will probably die or is brain dead by an Algerian immigrant, the government and the media is all making excuses for the immigrant. Well, he's
while arresting people complaining, while arresting the people that complain.
And there's a lot of video. Now, the narrative, they can be controlled to the extent that even if some true video leaks out, it can't counter the tsunami of official government narrative media. But there are pictures of Gardaí, the Guard is police.
Yeah, the Garda is like the
police.
Yes, the Irish
there's
police.
pictures of them smashing windows and them doing provocations, not only provocations, but things that will be blamed on them. For example, this is really crazy. Back during the COVID lockdowns, when they were saying you can't go to bars, things like that, people videoed Gardaí taking bags of beer bottles and beer cans and dumping them around bars, and then like throwing a brick through the window, and then saying, look, they're still drinking at the bars. Well, it's for the good purposes to show that the police are trying to stop illegal gatherings. But they were actually like taking bags of beer bottles that the police probably drank and throwing them out to like falsely accuse people of things they weren't even doing.
And in England, it was the same thing. They were having parties in the government building. They were having parties while people were in lockdown, and they were screwing around, having
and people were
parties
fired
all
for
day.
not taking the jab, everything else. And they were partying. So they're complete hypocrites and liars. The question is, will enough of the middle, the uncommitted middle, finally wake up and get mad enough? Because it's something we've been saying in America for years. It's not enough to beat the left by 1%. You have to beat them past the margin of fraud. You have to beat them 60-40 in order to squeak out a 51-49 win, because you have to overwhelm their fraud. And that's the question. Can we get 60% of Americans to see what's going on? I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah.
You got a lot of Spanish on the street,
Yeah.
but does that do anything?
No, you need to win. Well, in the case of Milei, when he got the network of Macri to actually check the votes, there was a 10-point difference between the previous voting and the final one. And people were thinking it would be very close, right? People were thinking it was gonna be super close. It ended up being almost an 11-point difference once they actually counted all the votes that were being stolen before. Because even if it's paper ballots, if you're just stealing them and just not counting them,
Right,
you
because
need a guy on
that's
each
right.
point to
At
check.
every point. That's right. And now, back to Argentina, he's talking about ending the Federal Reserve of Argentina, or the central bank that basically prints the money.
The thing is this.
Can he do that?
The guy is, I mean, because I've known about Milei for many, many years. The guy is an economist that he did work for, big banks. The guy describes himself as an anarcho-capitalist, right? He's an anarcho-capitalist libertarian, but he comes from the economic side of things, right? And in terms of how practical and how realistic it is for him to do these things, he said he would dynamite the central bank. He said, I'm talking about really putting explosives and blowing it down. That's what he said.
Because he's talking about dollarizing, like in the country of Panama, they use dollars in Panama.
Yeah.
And this way, now you can say, well, the American dollar is also going down, but nothing compared to Argentina.
Exactly.
Inflation.
That's the thing. Look, the thing is this. At least for me, I consider myself mostly a center libertarian type of guy, right? And I think that any kind of fiat currency is theft, because the guy that prints it is the one that enslaves you, that's using it.
He gives it to his friends. He gives it to his brother.
That's no way of having any kind of real independence. As long as you don't have
one of the economic principles that I think is going to be becoming widespread and understood more widely is fiat currency only exists in a place where the government has a monopoly on money.
Yeah.
Meaning you can only do a transaction in dollars or rubles or, euros. But if you pass a law that says, if this company wants to trade with another company in gold, or in kind, we'll give you a ship of Argentine beef, frozen beef, for a ship of, for 2 ships of oil or whatever. That kind of a transaction is very feasible today. It's not, we have the communications capability. People should be allowed to buy something with gold or silver.
Yeah. He is saying that
good money always chases out bad. Good money chases out bad.
He still claims that many of the things he says are truly very, he says that people should be capable of dealing and using any currency you want. If you want to trade with gold, you trade with gold. If you want to trade with US dollars,
anything.
You have the right to, because that's what freedom is all about, right? And then he says things like, I'm not dealing with commies. What, China? Yes, I'm not dealing with China. He immediately got a reply from China saying, "Be careful with what you say," and the typical threat. But he said, if people want to deal with them, sure, but we're not dealing with commies from a government stance. If people want to privately deal with them, do whatever you want, but we are not going to deal with communists.
But they're still, aren't they still like strip mining the oceans on both sides of South America?
Yeah.
Don't the Chinese have just these vast fleets?
Cities of there's no way for the Argentine government to even stop that. They don't have the fleet for it. They have floating cities all over the coast, because the Argentine coast is it's like the land mass goes under the water, but not too deep. So there's a lot of good fishing potential all over that platform. It's great for fishing.
Yeah,
and they just come there. Right, the continental shelf, exactly. So they have thousands and thousands of boats. They have no way, and even if you stop one or you even take it away, there's thousands of them. So there's no way for Argentina, with the current Navy force that it has, to stop that from happening.
Well, as of now, it's just like saying there's no way for Italy to stop a single ship that twice a week drops off 1,000 men. Yeah, there's a thing called a torpedo. I'm pretty sure they've had it since like more than 150 years.
Start sinking. But they
Because
probably
once
don't.
the soldiers, the difference between a 1944 invasion, then the guy came with the rifle. He had to shoot across the beach, right?
Yeah,
Now he comes in with no rifle, disappears into your city, and he gets the rifle later, like in the Paris nightclub attacks, right? They didn't come in as refugees with the AK-47s. They're given them later. But
yeah,
it's just as much of an invasion.
yes,
It's a sucker invasion. It's like you're a dupe. You're just a fool looking every day at 1,000 fighting age men from countries that hate you being dropped in your country. And your response is, oh, here's your hotel. Here's a debit card. Here's a phone card. Is there anything else we can do for you before you blow up and start killing us? That's
yeah,
a sucker country.
yeah, yeah. Um, I don't know exactly what he will do. I mean, I'm hopeful, but then there's this thing. For example, the relationship with Israel. I mean, if he's convert someone, and in the comments someone said, I have no problem with him converting to any religion he wants. Now, what kind of relationship he has with different states, that is something that comes into play as him being president.
Yeah, I have a feeling that he's an actor, that like a Vivek Ramaswamy. He says stuff exactly like you want to hear.
And
right?
then he turns
knows
on you.
the emotional and intellectual buttons to push, like a professional, like a perfect carnival barker. But is he sincere? I don't know. But even if he was, let's say he's completely sincere.
Can he actually do it?
He's a von Mises, hard money person. What if the unions just stop every bus, train, trash pickup? Then the country just stops.
Yeah.
The police are also leftists. How are they going to order the train people to run the trains if the unions order them to stop?
That's one of the things he actually got right. He got the woman that was in charge of the Ministry of Defense with Macri. She did a good job. And this is the thing about Matt. He is a chaotic guy. I don't think he's acting in terms of how insane he sounds at times. No one, and he's been doing this for years. And people, he gets into fights with people all the time, even with allies. He is not he's not a stable person.
But he's a change agent. We hope he's a change agent, because Argentina could be one of the richest countries in the world, right?
Yeah, the potential is there.
The potential, and it was. It
still is. It has massive resources. It's insane.
Massive resources. But the policies, and it shows how dangerous socialism is, because once that concept hooks into people that you're just going to work for the government and the money is for nothing, it's very hard to break out of that.
Look, I'm happy so far because he's been denounced, especially with all of the woke crap. Immediately they stopped with the inclusive language, all of that thing that was driving so many of us insane. It's sometimes those little things that you appreciate. Will he do the deep reforms? I don't know. I just hope he does.
Even can he? Like Trump.
He
came in with great intentions, but if the entire apparatus is lined up against you and just throwing crowbars into your gears.
They're already, you were talking about the unions. They're already saying that they will go into strike. I mean, he's not even president yet. The unions are saying we will strike all day long. We will stop the streets. We will block everything. They're already threatening to do that. They will do it right away.
Then
now,
at a certain point, you almost are going to have a definitive civil war, because the people that want to take the train are going to have to say, you drive the train, or we're going to go to where you live.
There's also the Bukele option, which is we throw all of their asses in jail, like Bukele did.
You need a really wide public support for something like that, and they had it in El Salvador because people were so worried about the hyperviolence.
Look how that place changed from one day to the next. Almost the guy just threw their all asses.
It shows that it can happen, but it's a question that in the USA, Dan Bongino is a real popular podcaster. He always asks, has it gotten bad enough yet? You don't have a Bukele until you get El Salvador levels of just crazy kidnappings and violence. Then hopefully, the people say, enough, anything that it takes, build the biggest prison in the world, If you got
Yeah.
tattoos on your face, we're
We'll
sorry.
throw your ass in jail.
We're throwing your ass in jail.
And not only
My-
that, I love the guy. He has them building houses. He's basically using them like slave labor to build something out of their useless lies.
Yeah, it's a good lesson from this also is do not get visible tattoos like on your neck or face, because there's a lot of situations where it just makes it so easy. You might think right now, oh, I'm so scary.
I'm a badass.
I'm a badass, and the
and
police will never.
comes along,
But at a certain point, it might be we're just shooting anybody we see with that on the face. We don't, at 500 yards. That's just all we need to know.
Yes.
Like right now in Mexico, the cartels are so powerful.
Yeah, they don't care. They need a Bukele of their own.
But I don't know if that's even possible, because in Mexico, the cartels are so powerful, so well armed, they may be impossible to defeat at this point. But in the Dan Bongino scale of has it gotten bad enough, basically in almost any country, when it's bad enough is when there's no food. Okay. When the supermarkets are all burned and looted and people are starving, that's when they'll listen to the only way we can do this is to do the Bukele route and be very harsh. The problem with that is you may wind up with a benign dictator, which I would consider all things in consideration, comparing communist regimes, different regimes. A Pinochet, to me, is not a bad outcome. It's better for Chile to have a Pinochet than to have 100 years of Cuban-style communism.
Yeah.
Right?
Or Venezuela, or something like Venezuela, which is the same thing.
But when you take the chance, or when your country is absolutely shattered to the point where the supermarkets are looted and the security situation is so bad, the engineers don't go to the water treatment plant, and people are like dying. Like in Zimbabwe now, they have open sewage running in the capital city, right there. They took over a functioning, second world country, Rhodesia, and now they have open sewage running because there's nobody manning the sewage treatment plant.
No one cares, yes.
Or they just don't, or all the engineers are promoted based on nepotism, even if they can't add 2 + 2. So the systems start to fail. In Argentina, if you have the supermarkets not getting stocked because the truck drivers and the trains are all stopped by the unions, when people are literally starving, that's when Milei might say, if you don't go to your job on the train tomorrow, you will be arrested and put in a Bukele prison in the Andes.
I think he has the right
to do it.
Yeah, he has the right. The woman, Javier Milei, is such a weird character. The woman he was running against, who was a former commie guerrilla fighter, turned conservative, right wing, and here's where she actually did a good job as Minister of Defense. She stopped many of the advances from the left. He said, well, she was a good Minister of Defense. We will put her again. And he actually got her as Minister of Defense. If he has this support from the people and she does what she probably wants to do so as to empower the police more, so as to stop from blocking the roads and all of that crap, then it could be the case that they don't have
Panama
freezing.
right now is destabilized to the point where food is a problem across Panama now. The province that's closest, the province in the corner closest to Costa Rica, where Panama Highway 1, Pan American Highway goes into Costa Rica.
Yeah,
that's where the American, like 2 weeks ago, walked out and shot a couple of the roadblockers.
Yeah, the guy. Yes, I saw that.
But
not the smartest move, right?
but road blocking has to be recategorized, and this is under anarcho tyranny. If the police are supporting the leftists, they'll just allow 10 guys to throw a couple tires on the highway and stop 10,000 cars and trucks for 10 guys with 10 tires. And the police are there basically guarding the road blockers. You have to flip that paradigm to make it very clear in advance on the media. When you block a highway, you're blocking an organ transplant. You're blocking a woman going to the hospital in labor. You're blocking somebody going for an operation or chemotherapy. You're blocking the truckload of food that is going to spoil that would be in your supermarket, which is now empty, right? The road blockers are the reason your supermarket is empty. We're now going to make road blocking a felony, like a 10-year mandatory punishment. We don't care if your thing is global warming, if it's a mining contract with Canada, we don't care. You block, and that's where you need, maybe not as harsh as a Bukele, but you need a leader like a Milei would say, if you block a road, if you're in a if you have a union contract and your union contract is I'm a conductor on a train, you better do your job, because transportation systems are all part of the supply chain that brings food and water into our house. And
you cannot have a running country without that.
You cannot, if the threat is always by the left to shut down the infrastructure, the transportation,
you'll do that.
Then it has to be made a felony. I don't care if it's Greta Thunberg. You go out and you glue yourself to the street. You're going to be in a 10-year felony in a harsh place, and then it will stop. But it's going to take that kind of gonads from the right, and I don't see it yet, because on the right, conservatives just want to get along and be treated well in the press. They have to stop caring if they're called racist. The conservatives have to just stop caring. All these the rote weapons, the automatic weapons the left pulls out. Oh, you're a racist. You just got to say screw you.
I don't care.
If you block a road, 10 years in prison.
He also has some, for example, he's very much against abortion from a libertarian perspective and he was debating some of these feminists, right? Like, oh, so you're a libertarian, and he said, no, it's not your body anymore. It's the body of this other person that you made with someone else. So yes, from a libertarian perspective, from the moment of conception, you don't have the right to end the life of this person.
He also calls out the false pope. He called him
the representative of the evil one on earth. He's very colorful in his.
Pope Benedict was still alive. It was a coup d'état. It was a Vatican coup d'état, and they rely on conservatives being so law-abiding. Well, if he's the Pope, we have to respect him. Pope Benedict wasn't dead. He wasn't senile. He's still alive. Pope Benedict was pushed out to bring in a communist. Period. That's what happened. Yeah,
he's definitely a commie pope, but I don't know. I just hope that he does at least half of the things he promised. If he can do just half, if he stabilizes the economy either through, as you were saying before, I'm no fan of the Fed. Ron Paul wrote a book that was called End the Fed, and Milei says he wants to bomb the central bank. Physically destroy the place.
It is going to absolutely take some change agents, some disruptors. And each country is, now that we're still not quite a complete globalist tyranny. Countries like El Salvador can be an experiment. Chile showed one way of dealing with the communists when Salvador Allende took over in Chile. He wasn't running that country constitutionally. He was on the path to making it Cuba. And the military at a certain point said, no mas. Well, at a certain point, for example, in Italy and Spain, a general is going, or an admiral is going to have to say no mas.
That's the thing when they talk about Franco, as Franco, the dictator, it was either that or Cuba, or ending up like Cuba. And in many ways, in Argentina, the same way.
In many ways, what was going on in the Spanish Republic was worse than Cuba, because they were slaughtering nuns and priests. They were doing atrocities that Fidel Castro didn't even do. Fidel Castro shot many people at the wall, right? But they weren't going into Catholic churches and raping nuns and burning people alive like the Republicans, so-called, in Spain were. They were crazy, like beyond Bolsheviks. They were like French Revolution mad dogs. And the military, in my opinion, the military saved Spain from being something as bad or worse than Cuba or the Soviet Union.
But when Milei talks about the cultural war, he's so right about the cultural war is changing the language. For example, when I was little, it was called the dirty war, la guerra sucia, the dirty war. It was a war. It was a war in Argentina, the left versus the right, the commies versus the military that did not want the country to turn into a communist regime, right? And these guys, these Marxist revolutionaries, Che Guevara styles, they wanted to install a communist regime. And we all understood that, but little by little, they chipped away from that truth into, it was an attack on poor hippies that were just all for love. And
college professors that just wanted to talk about their own.
Philosophers. Yes.
Philosophers.
Yeah.
But nothing about them bombing like officers' clubs and bases and
kidnapping people, torturing. Yeah, none of that.
Yeah.
Anyway. Hey, Matt, we're getting close here to the 1 hour line. Man, it's been great to talk with you again. And you're right. It was, maybe every weekend it's a little bit too intense, but every once in a while it's nice to catch up.
And now it's cold and rainy today anyway, so I wouldn't be doing anything outside really.
Oh, okay.
It's cold and rainy.
Hey, you have Messi over there. Are any of you guys watching any football? What you heathens call soccer, or is that
football?
Not a
that's
thing?
Football. It's where they kick the ball around flat on the grass. No, I really haven't. I'm not. I mean, I know he's a great player, but he's Argentine, right? Didn't he like win a World Cup? Who is who is the guy who like is in his like third World Cup and was? Is that him? That's
Messi. Yes, that's
the GOAT, the greatest of all time.
Yeah, well, that's he turned down how much was it? How many billions of dollars he turned down to live in Florida instead of going to how much money do you have? Because even talking among us, how would you turn down billions of dollars for just 2 years of playing in Saudi Arabia and then retiring anywhere you want? But I guess that when you have that much money, you just choose a lifestyle, right?
Yeah, you don't. It doesn't even matter how you lose track of how many zeros you have.
Yeah, I guess that's the case.
And some people just don't care about having the biggest yacht on the world. They have a nice enough life and
enough yacht as it is.
Right, as it is, and they can buy whatever they want whenever they want. So, but I last I was following him was the last World Cup, and that turned out pretty well.
Yeah, that was a nice moment.
And psychologically, I think that was good for Argentina also.
It was super positive. I know that people talk about how that is used to control, but in Argentina, it's such a big deal.
Well, it's psychology is so much of everything because when you make a whole people feel again, we're great people.
Yeah.
Why are we like this? We're great people. Why does our country like number 140 of 150?
But it was interesting to see some of the commies where are the black players? And people in Argentina, there was a comment in a YouTube video that said, it's because we're not a Disney movie, we're assholes.
Not a Disney movie, right? Exactly.
That was so funny.
All right.
Anyway, awesome to be talking with you again, man.
Yeah, we'll do it again, but we'll see. And maybe not at the same times. Maybe because I may be more available earlier in the morning for something short like this, and it's a better time for you too. You're not waking up the neighborhood.
Yeah, great. Okay. Anyway, man, Matt, take care.
All
Thanks
right,
everyone for being there. Awesome. Bye-bye, Matt.
Bye-bye.